And so, once finished, he journeyed to the primes, and seeded the first of each of the druidic pools, creating the first groves on each prime where the wild had touched. He held on to a few of these essences to imbue new pools should any new primes be formed, or if in desperation a new tether was needed for unseen circumstance. But as Terraspine was now locked away, and the new, or rather ancient, threat had been dealt with, that seemed a very far-off eventuality. Up until this point, all those who would become druidic followers of the realms, those who followed the wild, had not needed to form collectives bound by pools, within sacred circles or grounds abound with magic, encircled with channeling stones. They had merely called upon their respective hosts, and their power had flowed, much like any other priest. However, now was a different time, and they needed to change in order to survive. And so the new age of the druid began, as the priests of the wild melted into the past, along with the great beasts of the wild, each of them needing to return to a silvered pool in their sacred places, to connect with the wild once more. In a way, the druids were what could be known, to some, as prime demons, gaining their power directly from another entity, not present upon the primes, but gifting their power through portals to their domains, just as a daemon would gift a demon of their ability. The hosts reorganized in this transition, and several new hosts were created by Chrylsis, in order to fill the now vacant slots where the wild had once resided. For they did not know of what the wild had done, merely that they had lost contact with the greatest protector of the primes. However, the wild had already made plans for this too, and Chrylsis discovered that the wild had templated their new hosts already. Thalasiak merely smiled when eventually he discovered this, nodding knowingly at the seeming foresight of his slumbering friend. So, new gods formed in response to the loss of the old host form. The power was passed along into these new forms, depending upon the needs of the primes. The aspects of nature were born, and they represented the power of the natural world. One was tied to the power of the creatures of the realms. The power of another would be within the plants, and the natural life that was abundant upon the prime. Another had powers driven from the primal fury and rage of nature. And finally, one aspect had powers representing those of life, healing, and rejuvenation. This would complete the aspects of their fallen light. These four new gods would stand upon the primed, and act in the absence of their true light's original form. This was the first true split of the gods, and the one felt by most. It would not be the last, and it was seen by many who understood some small part of what had transpired, as the beginning of a war of the hosts. Against who, they could not say, but some surmised it was against their own kind, others against horrors of the demonic source itself. In a way, they were all right. In later times, they would wane in power, and some would even no longer be able to imbue actual priests, their powers becoming diluted and sparse, twisted and misshapen, but still present upon the primes, as well as the eventual revival and return of the wild. But this is for another time, another story. As the events of the primes transpired, Terraspine finally ripped his bonds asunder, and was able to see where he had been taken to, and his anger resounded across the small patch of prime he stood upon. In all directions he could see nothing close by, could sense the same. Thalasiak had sent him into the void the only way he could, within a bubble of magic. He pushed his senses to their limits, reaching out, and detected at the very edge of his power the other planes of existence, the primes, the elementals, even the astral, but he could not reach them across this sea of endless black. He needed to feed, but there was nothing but the surging power that flowed around him from that which had bound him, and so he bathed in it, and as he did, realized what he had done. The threads contained a ward, a protection against other threads. The way they were woven would prevent him from ever being able to open a portal to another plane. By feeding upon them, they had become one with his own form, and he was now bound by their rules. He would no longer use his planar magic to open a way from this place, as such magic would, if it ever found a target, merely slide off, as his threads would no longer interact with other threads. Thalasic had done what he had intended. He had made a box and put him in it, and buried him alive beyond all possible reach, with no way to open a door to the outside realities. He would drift here, buffeted by the very void itself, as a ship in an endless sea of black. Brute force was to no avail here, and as he attempted to push through the void itself, he lost every part of him that dared to be touched by this veil of darkness, obliterated into nothingness. He could not traverse it, as he knew all too well the utter annihilation that would be awaiting him should he try, for the void consumed all and gave nothing back. He raged for many months, until finally he accepted his fate and waited. And so he would wait for millennia. He became an old wives' tale, a mysterious creature to haunt the minds of those who dared ask about the deeper realms of the demonic. He became the daemon that no one saw, but all feared in the nightmares abound. However, it transpired, unbeknownst to him, that his prison was not able to be interacted with by any demonic means of any kind, but only by those of pure magic, or that of the gods themselves. No, he could not get himself out, but with time, and the foolishness of mortals, someone would eventually open a portal, somehow. His rage was slowly quelled, and his thoughts eventually settled upon his revenge. One day a reckoning would come, and he would drain every last thread of that creature into his, but only after it had erst been flayed, split, and utterly broken. He would gift unto him such pain and suffering, more so than he could ever have thought possible. He would know how and why and who had made him do it. One day he would escape this prison, and when he did, his first target would be Thalasic. It would be millennia before he would be contacted again, and not by any he knew. But this too is for another tale.